morning.
How are you?
Great.
All right. We had a fantastic weekend.
We did.
We were at the Marriage Today's XO Marriage Conference. Go ahead and get started. We've come almost through the entire series. And today we're going to cover the topic that is one of the top reasons for divorce. It's also one of the top reasons for blessings.
Yes.
Because married couples tend to be more financially well off than, say, single people. This is a super sensitive topic.
Yes.
I mean, we've talked about sex before, and we thought, ooh.
And we're going to be talking about it again soon in the next lesson.
But sex is one of the big things. Kids are one of the big things.
Right.
Money is a big
That
thing.
is a big, big thing. People, and especially money is a big thing in remarriage.
Oh, man, that's a good. Ooh, you took us down a totally different path.
Because when you're 20 and you don't have nothing and you don't know nothing, that's a different story than when you're 40 and you've accumulated retirement and a little bit of savings and wealth, huh?
Yeah. No, and look, since you brought us down that trail, is you're right. When you come into a blended or a remarried situation, you know, a lot of times when you leave that divorce, you leave and it becomes so much more proprietary. You're like, you know what, I escaped with this. There is no way I'm going to make it vulnerable.
Right.
And you hoard things and you hide things. And especially in a blended family situation where maybe, you know, one spouse has saved money, a college fund for their biological child, and then you marry and your spouse has not had the opportunity to save any money for their children's college or anything. And so, you know, there's a lot of opportunity for inequity and control and dominance. And we're going to talk about some of the dangers when it comes to marriage management, money management. I feel like I'm talking in a barrel with my voice. But we want to start off, we want to read Proverbs 10:22. If you would.
It says, "The blessing of the Lord brings wealth without painful toil for it." That is the truth, huh?
And it is true. Statistically, factually, people who are married usually do better than people that are single.
Yes.
Because now you're sharing your resources. And then, you know, Christian believers, people who manage their money in a Bible-based method, also experience success.
Right.
And, you know, there's also that additional piece where God's going to provide. And God makes the promise all throughout His Word that He's going to provide. And, you know, we get some of the dangers we're going to talk about and the different type of money managers where, you know, money can become your God. There's a lot of things that can become your God, but money is one of them. And when you think that money is allowing you spiritual freedom, spiritual peace, that's not that. You're not relying on God. You're relying on your bank account. Right.
You know, and like individually, you know, you can be single and successful, and you know, we're not saying that, but God blesses marriage. You know, so when you're single and then you come together as one, united, God is going to bless that union because it is a God created marriage. And it's the same within your finances. But if you are living like you're single while you're married, He's not going to bless that.
Right.
You know, He wants you to be united in all things.
Right.
And you know, so it's really important. You know, that was one of our big struggles was finances when we first got married. You know, it's like we kind of each had our thing. You know, you had your retirement stuff, and you know, I had mine. You didn't want to encroach on mine, and all of these things. And you know, I mean, it was a couple years in before, you know, after we'd started praying about it, and you know, God had started putting it on your part, and they're like, you need to be part of financial decisions and things like that.
Right. No, you're right. I mean, and it was such a different situation because there was a high degree of inequality.
Right.
In a police officer's earnings and the earnings you had as a writer, but so it was the script was flipped.
Right.
And you know, one of the things was, you know, when we're talking about and I actually posted the link about the article that I'd written a while back. It's is your money married or is it just dating?
Right.
And that's one of the things. That's one of the things that happens is that you may be physically married,
Mm-hmm.
but you keep your money separate and you keep your money dating. And it took a while for me to truly participate. Because I felt like, well, you know what, she made this money. She created wealth. I saved money, and it was two different philosophies.
Mm-hmm.
But you exercise the biblical model, and when I thought I was doing a nice gesture by saying, hey, how about we do a prenuptial, and she was so offended by it,
Mm-hmm.
and I couldn't understand why in the world would she be offended by it.
Right.
I mean, I'm trying to do the right thing and offering her protection, but she saw it as I was planning an exit strategy. What if? What if this doesn't work out? Let's keep hers, and mine.
Right.
And I didn't understand the spiritual injury that I caused by making that recommendation.
Right.
And there was no injury implied, and that's part of the danger. Number one is because there wasn't we didn't allow the lordship over the spiritual lordship. But that's the first danger in our money management.
Right. And Matthew 6:33 says, "But seek first the kingdom of God and His righteousness, and all these things shall be added to you." And and that was one of the things with our our finances when we first got married. Like, I hate doing finances. I hate it. Like, it didn't. I've been at both ends of the spectrum where I've had less than nothing, and then I've had been comfortable in my earnings.
Right.
And it doesn't matter if I had less than nothing or comfortable in my earnings. Paying bills stresses me out.
Mm-hmm.
Like, just doing the finances and stuff like that. And so when we got married, and it was, you didn't want to intrude, like, to me, that left all the burden to me. And this is something that you should be sharing, because, look, everybody brings something different to the table.
Right. I
mean, you're a great saver, and I'm not. I'm a spender,
right.
And God does not put normally two people that are the same together.
And the key is, no matter, and we talked about it before, you have spenders and you have savers, and they usually wind up coming together, and
Mm-hmm.
and that's one of the beauties of God's design.
Right.
But the key is that Christ has to be the priority.
Mm-hmm.
Christ has got to be the Lord over your finances.
Right.
And one of the things that you'll do is when you pray about your decisions, and if you don't pray, God's not going to bless you.
Right.
If you're spending money outside of His will,
Mm-hmm.
if you're spending money and you allow money to be your God, God's not going to bless you.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, He flat warned you against covetousness in Deuteronomy or in Exodus in His 10 Commandments. Thou shalt not covet, and there shall be no God before me. And when you're focusing on money, that's exactly what you're doing. You're coveting money, or you're looking at other people's wealth, like keeping up with the Joneses,
Right.
And then money becomes another God, and God's not going to bless that.
Right.
On the other side of the coin, if you give, a lot of people get caught up on tithing.
Right.
Well, I'm not giving my 10%. Let God get His own money, but and it's painful to hear that, because God doesn't. You're right. God doesn't need your money. You need God to take your money and bless that money.
Right.
Like they say, God can do more with your 90% than you can do with your 100%. And a lot of people are hung up on tithing, and they think, well, I just can't. There's no way I can make it. With giving 10% to the church, to God's service. But it's not about funding the priest or the pastor or whatever. It's about obedience.
Right.
And it's about saying, God, I trust you.
Right.
I trust you, and I'm gonna give this portion to you. Now that's just tithing.
Right.
We're not talking about giving, which is above that. But that's honoring God by trusting Him.
Right. And we have seen firsthand what God can do when you are obedient and you do give, and you do have the Lord bless your money like that. I mean, He provides abundantly when you are obedient like that.
Right.
And if Jesus is Lord of your finances, then the first thing you're going to do is you're going to pray about your decisions, and you don't make them without His blessing.
Right.
And that we made huge mistakes in that, early on in our marriage.
Right.
We did not pray over big decisions. And look, it cost us a lot of money in a lot of different areas.
A lot of lessons,
A lot
expensive
of
lessons.
expensive lessons
So
learned.
the second danger is disrespecting your spouse's financial perspective and input. And this is, we talked about one of the foundational laws of marriage, and the law of possession is one of them, and it means all in.
Right.
Right. It's not a contractual marriage where it's 50-50. It's a covenant marriage where it's all in 100-100. So again, where it comes down to, one may be a spender, one may be a saver. If the spender says, "Hey, look, you can stuff your money in a jar all you want. I'm going to take it in. I'm going to buy what I want." If you're disrespecting your spouse's opinion, then you really put that spouse at a deficit. You put them at you're exercising dominance over your spouse. Right. And there's different types of money languages, and we want to go over those because there's some great notes.
It's really good to understand which one you are.
Right.
So you can understand how your spouse views money and why money is important to them.
That's a good point, because that's exactly a good point. Because a lot of times you'll get into an argument because maybe the spouse is a spender, and you just think, well, you're just so reckless. You're doing this because you're greedy. But when you understand the languages of money management, financial management, then you understand it may not be an issue of greed. It may be their way to show, maybe comfort, maybe love, maybe respect. No, so let's follow the notes, and we'll start with the first.
The first, I guess, financial perspective is that it's called the driver. And for the driver, money means success. The driver may have an overdependence on money for self-esteem, confidence, and security. So that's the strength. The weakness of that is, rather than trusting God for identity and purpose, they allow money to meet their needs, thereby making money their God. Communicates love by showing. So house, car, possessions, they provide.
Right. And it's funny that she had recommended a book for me to read a while back, and I was listening to the audiobook version, and it was I would say a highly respected Christian counselor. And I'm going to tell you, I was about halfway through, and I just stopped listening to it.
Right. Because
every issue, anything that came up, I don't know if it was about kids or fidelity or infidelity or spirituality, everything went back to money. And he was a driver. Every example he gave, if you and your wife, if you have an argument over an ex-girlfriend or something, you go out and you buy her a bubble bath and you give it to her. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding. Like, you have got to be kidding. You're giving this advice. And the whole book was from the perspective of a money driver. And I don't know if this person didn't realize they were a money driver or if they just thought that money was going to solve all the problems.
Right.
But it also said, you've got to be careful when you're looking at resources, not just money, but resources. So the other side is the amiable money language. Excuse me. You want to read that?
Yeah, I'll read that for you. The strength for the amiable money language, it means money means love. Relationships are the focus of their financial desires. Lack of money means losing the ability to express love. And the weakness in this is the amiable may be kind and generous, but can be poor money manager who is unprepared for the long term. Communicates love by sharing. What's mine is yours, and that likes to have fun. And this is totally me. I am the amiable.
You are a little animal, though.
Yeah, the amiable money language. Because to me that does, if I can give, that's how I show love, and that's how I receive love. That's how I feel love too, when I'm able to give to you or to the kids or do things and it's, a lot of times to the detriment. I would get
to the detriment.
Yeah. I would, because I do, I have that generous spirit, to give like that.
No, you're right. And I want to say hello to Laura and Rebecca Hedgewood and Jamie Wycliffe. We'll be seeing Jamie in a couple hours. And Amanda.
And Amanda, we were talking about you last night. I saw that picture of your parents.
Oh, yeah.
And
you were telling me about that.
all those years of couples that have gotten
The
together.
life groups.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
No, that was a great,
But
that's a great share.
so that's my money language for sure.
Amiable.
And,
That's you.
yes.
No, you're right. And you know what? And you've got to be careful, because you're right. Where people, we heard examples of, a guy that wanted to bring his family to Disney World, and it was like, listen, we got to make sure we got the money to bring everybody to Disney World. I mean, that's always everybody's standard, right?
Right.
I'm bringing the family to Disney World. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. And they can go. People, how many people go into debt, Disney debt,
Right.
with those Disney dollars
Right.
and the Disney this and that to have a good time? And you know what? The other spouse is sitting over there like counting pennies, and knowing that you're not going to have the money to
Right.
pay other bills when you leave Fantasyland.
Right.
And that causes so much stress.
Right.
So if you prayed over that decision,
Right.
and again, law of possession, everything's equal, everything's shared. If it got to a point where, hey, let's get to this point where we've saved $4,000, then we can take them and
Right.
do that. Let's show some love, but let's show some financial
Right.
responsibility.
And when you went back to saying that law of possession, if one of you says no, don't do it. Every decision that you make has to be both of you that make the decision.
Mhm.
And if one of you, if y'all have prayed about it and one of you is not comfortable with it, don't do it.
Right.
And definitely don't go outside of God's will and your spouse's.
And do it anyway.
And do it anyway.
I'm gonna do it anyway.
Mhm.
I'm gonna do it
That's
anyway.
a big one.
Oh
All right.
my gosh.
So C, and I should say too, when we talk about that, God does not expect you to sit on your money and not have fun with it.
Mhm.
If He blesses you, as long as you're praying over your decisions and you're both in agreement, there's no reason to not plan for big trips or being able to provide for your whole
Right.
family or doing fun things or so.
Yeah, a book that we've written together, and actually our literary agent is shopping it. There was a line that I'd written about poverty and when did it become biblical chic.
Right.
And I remember you were reading over that in the editing process, and I heard you laughing out loud, and I knew exactly where you were.
Mm-hmm.
And but you're right. I mean, being Christian or being faithful doesn't mean being poor.
Right.
And now you could be rich, but you could be very poor
Poor
of
in
spirit,
spirit, yeah.
when your money is not used to bless God.
Yeah. All right. The next one is the analytic money language.
Mhm.
And the analytic money language, it means security.
Mhm.
And money keeps away chaos and problems. Analytics are well structured and good planners. But the weakness of this, the analytic, though well structured, may be insensitive to the needs of people and the voice of God.
And I'll tell you, that
may
was
be legalistic and unyielding, and they communicate love by saving. They plan for long-term goals and then invest wisely.
and that was me for the longest time. But it was a condition, I think, a combination condition where I wasn't honoring God. I was locked into a career where 30 years was the gold standard.
Right.
Your pension. And in law enforcement, you don't make a lot of money up front, but there's a great pension. So you do 30 years, the example, and at the end of 30 years, you make 100% of your last or your highest 3 years combined.
Right.
So, for cops, I mean, that's a great thing. That's security. Now, the other side of the coin is, nationwide, most officers, when they retire after a full 30-year career, you know what their life expectancy is? 3 years.
Yep.
3 years. Can you imagine being so locked in to the analytic money language?
Right.
And you pinch pennies and you do without, and you don't go on vacations, you don't enjoy your money, you don't bless God, you don't bless your family, you don't bless yourself or others, so you can do your 30 years.
Right.
30, and then 3-year life expectancy. That's insane.
Yeah.
I mean, so and I'll tell you, I've told Leah before, like my first 10 years in law enforcement, I never took a vacation. I never took a sick day because I wanted to add to my pension. But I never took a vacation. And I was proud of that until about 10 years after that. And I saw the personal destruction that it caused in my life because you're right, I was so legalistic. I was so unyielding. and I would provide, provided for me, provided for Max. But it's funny, because that's where you and I clashed initially.
Mm-hmm.
No, I'm gonna save for a pension, and you're like, well, I want to take everybody to Disney, but we did. We learned some hard lessons, and we began to pray about it.
Mm-hmm.
So that is. You asked me last night, what is my language, and I was unwilling to admit, but now I feel a sense of obligation.
Right. No, and and a lot of who we are, our money language is how we were raised.
Oh yeah.
It has a lot to do with that.
That's a good point.
So there's nothing wrong with anyone's money language. Everybody is going to be different, but it's how you embrace those differences as a couple.
And and it was either a model, because my dad was a school teacher, and my mom stayed home and raised us 7 kids, and we pinched pennies. We didn't have any. I mean, 7 kids on a school teacher on salary. We had nothing. So but school teachers are the same way. It's all about pension, live to retirement.
Right.
And so that was the example. But, there are people who grow up in poverty, and then, instead of saying, well, savings is the only way to do it, they become, I will never go hungry. I will never be poor.
Right.
And, when you start making those never demands,
right, you
start to take yourself out of God's blessing.
Right.
And you start this unhealthy reliance upon your own ability.
Yep. And the last one is the expressive money language. And for them, money means acceptance and respect from desirable people. Money provides a basis for relationships. And their weakness is an expressive may use money the way some people use alcohol to hide their fears and deal with their pain.
Yeah.
And they communicate love by spending. They're shopaholics. They live in financial denial.
Yeah. And that is very common, and it's very unfortunate.
Yeah.
And that's when that God is nowhere involved.
Right.
When your money means acceptance from, I love that definition, from desirable people.
Right.
Who are the desirable people? Right. Because I can tell you that our friends, who we desire, their friendship, it has nothing to do with money.
Right.
And amongst our friends, especially in our church small group, I mean, they may range from one spectrum to the other. But you know what? I couldn't tell you what their 401s read.
No.
Their desirability is their passion for Christ.
Right.
And that's what draws us to them. So it really is. It's very unfortunate when you get down to the expressive, because they do. Money is not only their God, but it becomes their lover or their mistress or maybe even their spouse. And it is a really dangerous situation to be in.
Right. No, absolutely. And look, and whoever you were married to, or if you're one, that's why these conversations are really important to have. Like, identify who you are and have a conversation about it.
Right.
Because when you're praying over it and praying over how to spend your money, you can organize your finances to where both are fulfilled.
Right.
Where the shopaholic, somebody who feels like that, does isn't so clamped down by the security person.
Right.
that and we're going to talk about that next.
Now let me throw this wrinkle at you, because
dominance.
You started off with the blended family or the remarried, but if you were in a situation where maybe dominance was exerted over you because of a different money language, and then maybe it led to divorce, and then it's so important when you're coming into a remarriage situation that you talk about things. And a lot of times you come in there gun shy, and it's like, well, I don't want to cause any problems, and so you may wind up with an expressive who you think, they got a nice car and they wear nice clothes, but they got a 0 credit score, So I mean, this is serious business.
These are things you need to talk about before you get married.
Before you get, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But a lot of times you don't want to upset the apple cart, because
you don't want to pry.
You've already been divorced.
Right.
And this person, a lot of times we go into a second relationship and we've still got the cracks, and we think we're broken. We think maybe we're undeserving, and we're a little bit grateful to this other person because, well, golly, as broken as I am, this person's willing to accept me. And listen, that is a position of subjection, and that is not a good position to go into a relate. You're better off alone
Right.
than going into that situation. But kids, whew, totally different topic.
Right.
But if you don't talk about child rearing and child philosophy and vision for families, but the other big button that causes the explosion is money. And so you go into a situation where you don't want to, like you said, you don't want to
Right.
upset anybody, so you don't talk about money. Listen, the very first thing you talk about, you should ask, is a credit report.
Right.
And you know what? And if that person's offended by it, then that tells you where they are. Well, they're
Right.
probably a driver or an analytic that shows you where they are with the money language. And they're not willing. If you're not willing to open up your credit score.
Well, and the reason for this is too is like, what if you sell both your houses and you all of a sudden need to get a new house or something like that? You don't want to be surprised day up. You're not qualified for a house anymore. Those kind of things. Don't be surprised by that stuff. But credit scores and what kind of debt do you have? What kind of child support do you have to pay? What kind of alimony do you have to pay?
Man, you're like, you got like ninja knives and you're whacking, you're chopping it.
These are all things, you've got to know the answers to these things.
Listen, as soon as you said it, man, I tell you, I feel the Holy Spirit come over me just and throw this out there. But this is a whole different topic.
Right.
But it all goes back to money. Is, when you come into a blended family, a remarriage situation, and some of the things that we talk about in our book, that Life After Divorce, is, so let's say, you each have been divorced, and okay, so she's going to move into your house. Talking about being sensitive, how's your new spouse feeling about living in the house that your ex-wife, that you and your ex-wife built together, or sleeping in the bed you and your ex-wife consume children, or even taking a shower, or
Right.
I mean, these are things that remarried people need to think about before they remarry. So even, or vice versa, if the guy's going to live in the woman's place, how does it feel to be in the garage with the power tools at the ex-husband? So you say, well, you know what, we're going to liquidate and we're going to buy something new.
Right.
Well, what if this person is in bankruptcy, or what if they have zero credit, or what if they got debtors? And man, that is so key. So many people we talk to, every time that other spouse writes a child support check, there's so much anger, so much bitterness and resentment against the other biological parent and their own spouse. But you know what? You know where that comes from? From lack of communication.
Right.
Because you didn't talk about it, but when you were all googly in love.
Right.
Listen, be googly, be in love, but at some point you got to grow up.
Right.
At some point you got to start looking at the reality. Listen, there's no wonder that after first divorces fail 50% of the time, and we're going to turn that number, we're going to knock that number down.
Right.
Second divorce, second marriages fail 62 or 63% of the time. Big things. They don't talk about kids.
Right.
They don't talk about money. And when we talk about that foundational law of marriage, the law of possession, the first time that spouse says, well, those are your kids, whew, that's an injury that doesn't heal. Or they say, well, that's my money. That's another injury that doesn't heal. And then you start to see why second marriage is divorced 62% of the time. Third marriage is divorced 74% of the time.
Right.
Because these are the big issues that come into play.
And we're not saying, if you're in love with a person that has a bad credit score, that you should not marry them. But if you don't communicate those things, you don't have a game plan to tackle it together.
What do they say? And knowing is half the battle.
That's right. So really important for that communication.
Well, and I'll just throw this in too, because it is such a hot topic. That should be a thermometer when you talk about transparency and trust and that law of possession. If the other person gets sensitive and starts, listen, if you're going to hide your bank account, your credit score, then you're going to hide your phone and your passwords and your girlfriends and your secrets and your sins. I mean, this is all a barometer for transparency. So, we had a dear friend about a year or so ago sent us a message and said, man, I'm so in love. This person is so right, but they insist on keeping our money separate. You know, he worked for his, whatever I've got is mine. We're like, no.
And she used the words, the just in case.
Just in case. There you go. Man,
Red
Leah
flag.
said it before.
Yeah.
If you hear the words just in case,
You're not ready.
You're
for
not ready.
marriage.
Just don't go any further. You're better off alone. God will bless you alone.
Right.
No,
that's
you're
absolutely right. All right. So danger number 3 is the dominance of money in financial decisions. And it is common for there to be a disproportionate control of the money. Whether man or woman, it is important to be equal partners, even if one spouse manages paying the bills.
Right.
You know, and
you know, we heard a good example. Jimmy Evans was talking about that, where he makes the money,
right,
and his wife Karen, and she runs the home, but she pays all the bills. And where he said, you know, he's not a good bill payer, he's not a good money manager. He's a good money maker, provider, but he's not a good money manager. And that's where that equality comes from. And you know, when there was more traditional gender roles where the wife stayed home to raise the kids, or like my mom did. You know, my mom stayed home and raised 7 kids. My dad taught school, and you know, that's where, you know, like he said, was it had they divorced, she couldn't have made it on her own because she didn't have the skills to make money, but he didn't have the skills to manage money.
right,
And that's where both are important. But you're right with that dominance.
right.
It's like, well, I make the money.
You know, and he talked about that a lot this weekend. You know, in the session about how, you know, like men especially, you have to be careful because you know women have that fear. Their number one need is security.
Yeah, good point.
You know, and women's fear. You know, I mean, what happens 30 years down the road when she has had your children and she stayed at home and worked at the home and provided and taken care for, and there's that fear there, you know, that you're going to leave and take your resources, you know, but that is every bit as much of hers as it is, you know, yours because of that equality in the finances.
Right.
But you know, so it's really important, especially for men, to give your wife the security to know that she's always going to be secure.
No, that is, you're exactly right. I mean, and that's a good point because we've talked about that, about women speaking in languages of security and men speaking in languages of honor. And you know, on the flip side, if the woman, and we're saying the woman, but we're only speaking in terms of gender because we're talking about the specifics of the language that they best communicate in. So, you know, if the woman is constantly threatening the guy, you know, well, I know how much you make. I know how much you make. I'm going to take. Well, then, you know, that's disrespectful and that's threatening to the man. And then you know, then he may start hoarding things away. And I love the example Jimmy Evans gave about the woman who thought they were poor and the guy had money all over town. You know, but he was exercising dominance. But that is so true. I mean, you know, we talk about submission and the strength that it takes for a woman to submit to her husband. And you're even in that situation, women or actually women, you know, a lot of times make better bosses, you know, as far as the financial side, the corporate side. But traditionally women have, and they still do, they voluntarily stay home, especially when a child is born. And that's a position of submission where they could be in the corporate world making just as much money, possibly more. And then they have assumed financial equity in the relationship, but yet the new child suffers, the family suffers. So out of love and nurturing, nesting, you know, the woman, you know, submits to the family's needs, Charmaine's on, and says, I'm going to stay home, I'm going to make less money or not earn income, but I'm still going to manage and I'm still going to run the home. And that is a position of fear. I can see that. Where all of a sudden you're giving up your earning potential. And the longer you stay out of the working market, the harder it is to re-enter. So you know, guys, you know, you're right. When you're exercising dominance, that's total violation of God's law of possession and priority.
Yeah. And then danger number 4 is the disagreement about financial decisions, priorities, and values. And Luke 11:17 says, it is impossible to disagree and succeed. Yeah. And that is the truth. If when y'all come together, and first of all, because the first law is the first rule is to pray over all your financial decisions.
Right.
And if one of you is in disagreement, then
it doesn't happen.
It doesn't happen. And that's our rule. That should be how you do things. You should have that equal equity in your marriage.
And if one is in the position where they're like, you know what, I'm just going to ramrod this. I want that boat. And you go out and you make that major purchase. I mean, now you put your family in a financial debt. And listen, maybe you're a billionaire, and a $40,000 bass boat doesn't mean anything to the line item, but to your wife, to your spouse, let's do it that way. I mean, that is absolute disrespect.
Right.
Because despite you praying about it and not feeling blessed about it, and then your spouse not feeling that part of the decision, they will. And then the next thing what does the person do? Come on, let's go to the lake. Right. Let's go. Do you really think that they're going to enjoy the benefit of that item that you broke the you kind of broke the covenant to go purchase?
Right.
No.
No, I mean,
it's absolute selfishness.
When you make big decisions like that, you're living that single life, and God's not gonna bless that while you're married. Live the married life, not the single life. But the purpose of creating a budget is so you will have a proactive conversation in advance. Conversation is key here when dealing with finances. Budgeting forces you to agree beforehand on values. And
that is so key. Listen, I told Leah when we came together, I'd never, ever, ever balanced a checkbook. Never. Because I was that analytic. Because I knew exactly how much I made. I knew exactly how much I needed for bills. So that money would automatically be deducted. And I had liquid money left. And whatever was in the bank account that I classified as liquid, I lived within that means. And when that money was gone, then I stopped living that liquid life. Now, I had an overflow account, but I didn't live an extravagant lifestyle.
Right.
But I never bothered with a budget. I never bothered watching my money because I controlled it.
Right.
I was very conservative with it. And now the funny side was, with the police department, you had a multi-million-dollar budget. We were very, had to be very fiscally conservative. But on my personal life, I didn't. And it wasn't because I was just throwing money out the window. I was very, very conservative, but I never looked at a budget or a bank account. And then when we started dating, we really didn't either. We didn't have a clue where we stood.
No.
And so what you fail to do is you fail to control your money. We love the Dave Ramsey where he says, if you don't control your money's going to walk away.
Yeah, it's going to control you.
It's going to control you, and you don't have any idea where your money went. Creating a budget, like Leah said, it creates value. It requires a vision, and it sets your priority as a couple.
Right. Yeah, and that's the second part of that. It says have an annual vision retreat to talk and pray about it.
Right.
And it's really important. Those vision retreats, to cover every aspect of your marriage are crucial. All right, danger number 5 is debt.
Danger.
Only consider borrowing for essential items like a home or a car. Save money and live within your means. Save for emergencies. Pay cash for purchases. Only use credit cards if you pay them off monthly. And that's pretty much the Dave. If y'all have never done the Dave Ramsey financial money or total money makeover, we highly recommend it. It's awesome. Yeah. It doesn't matter how little you make or how much you make, because even if you're if you're in the making little aspect, all of a sudden you're going to find money that you never understood was there before.
Yeah.
And if you are in the overage of money, if you make a lot of money, you're going to see where you can really start investing and multiplying your money even more.
Well, one of the things we found when we committed to, we got to a point where we said, okay, we are not truly blessing God with our money.
Right.
God's blessed us, but we've not reciprocated.
Right.
And we said we're refocusing our priorities, and but so we had the will, we didn't really have the way.
Right.
We were both good at I was good at making a living and saving for pension, and you were good at generating income. But we were not good at managing and using that to honor God. So when we made the investment in Dave Ramsey, Financial Peace University, and the principles just blew our mind.
And they're so simple.
No, it really is. It is very simple. But little things like, we, like you said, you start finding money where you didn't know you had. But we were spending money like we had no idea the money that was going out. We were paying for services that we no longer use. We were paying for things in a house in Louisiana we no longer owned. A gym membership that was not... No, look, both of us, and like we're on social media. We do a lot of advertising on Facebook and all the different, new gadgets and things. And we had to be the first on all of that stuff. So we'd sign up and we'd pay $35 or $50 or $75 a month. And it had gotten so much that we didn't have a clue. We were like a sieve, and the money was just pouring out. And we didn't have a clue. We didn't know where to start, or we didn't know how to stop.
Right.
But we thought, well, we need it for our business, But man, when we locked it down, when we started getting rid of credit cards and we started, paying with cash, that's a big thing.
Yeah.
Let me tell you, it's nothing to swipe that credit card. But when you got to hand that 20 over, it becomes personal.
Right.
And it really did. It allowed us to become much better in our tithing and our giving.
Yeah, when we just better stewards all over,
Big time, big time.
But managing money can be one of the greatest blessings because it builds trust in the relationship.
That's powerful.
It is, and necessary for your marriage to work.
And that'll lead me into this slide because I love it. And again, it's when you're talking about trust in your relationship, or is your money at a married level of trust, or is your money at just a dating kind of flirting level of trust? And you're exactly right. And also that article is pinned to the top of this post.
And then, as you have that conversation and you agree on spending, you can have a plan to give, you can have a plan to pay off debt, you can have a plan to save for your goals. But it takes effort, and it's going to take communication to kind of come into each other's world and understand, what's your money language and what's my money language.
Right. And Charmaine's, I see she got some wisdom over there.
She says she's been through FPU.
Okay, yeah. Well, actually, I think the church House of Prayer, didn't they?
Most churches do offer.
Most churches, they sponsor it or they teach the classes, and it's absolutely it's critical. No matter what your money management resource is, guys, we're and I love that Leah, she jumped off topic, and you caught me off guard when you started talking about remarriage and blended family. But man, that is so important. You're right. When you're coming into your first marriage and you're young and you're dumb and you're full of optimism.
Right.
I knew you'd like that one. You really don't have anything to bring to the table.
No.
And what you build, what you acquire,
yeah.
is what you acquired together. And so that makes divorce so much more painful because, man, we did this together. But then when it comes down to that second time around, you're still clinging to what you built and lost in your first marriage.
And you bring that up, and they touched on that at the conference this weekend. With if you are thinking about divorce right now, the expense of divorce is more than you could ever imagine.
Yeah.
You talk. If y'all are struggling financially right now, it's not gonna help the problem when you divorce. Right. It's gonna multiply it, and then multiply it again. If there's a chance, for you to go to counseling and spend $100 an hour or $125 an hour
instead of $500
versus
for
$500 an hour for your attorney,
and you're each paying
$500 an hour, so it's $1,000 an hour. Then the breakdown. You talk about, okay, well, you both have jobs. Well, now you're going to need 2 homes.
Right.
Now you're going to pay 2 sets of mortgages. Now you're going to pay 2 utilities, and one of you is going to be paying child support or alimony or things like that. So if you think that divorce is going to simplify your financial problems, it's not.
Right.
You're
right.
And then, if you've been through all that, how awful it is. It's
Yeah.
devastating on all fronts.
Which blows my mind because you're right. You've been through it.
Mm-hmm.
You've lost half of your financial stability while you've doubled your expenses in divorce,
Right.
and then you remarry and you go into remarriage without the foundation,
Right.
and now you're putting yourself in the same situation. Only you're not operating from at least an equal
Right.
deficit. It's divided. It's already been divided by two. Now you're looking at a second divorce,
Right.
where you're even going into greater financial peril.
You know, and like as many things that we did wrong early on in our marriage, you know, and that we didn't, you know, that we weren't doing the right way. You know, I would say that having, like me especially, being able to be like, look, this is ours, you know, I think probably saved us a lot of heartache on that front of things, because, you know, I can't even imagine adding money problems or money things on top of all the other issues that we were dealing with early on in our marriage.
No.
So, but if you are going into that marriage, second marriage or third marriage, you know, it's really important to have that trust in your spouse, to be like, you know, what's mine is yours and what's yours is mine. And if you don't have that trust in your spouse, there's an issue there.
Right. And there's that selflessness that we talk about, be it in sex, be it in child rearing, be it in finances. You know, it is when it's my money, your money.
Right.
When you talk in those terms, you're it's a precursor to failure. And you know, and Charmaine had said that, you know, it's best for engaged couples to go through this together, because you learn a lot about each other.
Right.
And then while learning about each other, you're also learning to work together. And that is so important.
No,
so
absolutely.
It's a good place to wrap it up. I've loved this conversation because children and money are the two hot buttons.
Right.
First, second, third marriages, whatever. And it's such an easy fix with just a conversation. You know, kids require a lot of communication, constant. But if you can sit down and you look at the different dangers and you're aware of them, and then you understand the different money languages, and you understand why maybe, you know, Leah likes to spend money and we go to Disney World, or I like to save money for a pension, and then, you know, you can understand that, and you can work within those parameters or come up with an agreement just to the outside, so everybody has equity.
Right.
Then you've already eliminated one of the top reasons for divorce.
Yeah. And these are, you know, and because these are uncomfortable issues, you know, and we kind of ignore them because we're in love, you know, like before you get married. And ignoring them because you're in love it's not gonna make them go away after you get married.
No.
Because, you know, I mean, that's going to do nothing but cause kind of those hidden issues and hidden problems. And then one day it's just going to explode and blow up, and then you're going to have big problems. So
we appreciate it. It is a super hot topic. Check the article that I wrote, and it reiterates a lot of what we're talking about.
Right.
You know, is your money just dating, or is it married? And you can be married and your money be dating, right? So we suggest that they all be married, all in the law of possession.
All
right?
in, be all in.
So we do thank you, and we pray for you, and very much appreciate. And I was excited. I mean, this is a great topic.
Yep,
because there's so much potential for devastation, but there's so much more potential for God's blessing and to build a wonderful foundation. So
absolutely,
good deal.
Yep.
Thank y'all.
All right. Bye.